Hello everyone, welcome to the CELPIP Full Course 2026. I'm Jincy, CELPIP Certified Trainer at Jincy. In this 1 hour masterclass, I'm going to give you a complete overview of the CELPIP General Test. Whether you're completely new to CELPIP or you've already attempted the test and if you want to improve your score, this session will give you a clear understanding of the test format, the question types, the strategies that you need, and the mistake that you should avoid. We will cover all the 4 skills: listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Most importantly, I don't want you to memorize the techniques. So stay with me until the end because we will finish with the complete test day strategy and I will provide you a final preparation checklist also. So with much no delay, let's get started. I'll share my screen with you. Yes. CELPIP Full Course 2026 in 1 hour. Now, your complete CELPIP roadmap. We're going to cover 8 important areas. First, we'll understand the CELPIP test format. Second, we'll look at the scoring basics. Then, because understanding your target score is extremely important. Third, listening strategies. Followed by that will be reading strategies, then writing strategies, speaking strategies. And after that, we will discuss the most common mistakes that candidates make. And finally, I will explain the test day strategy. My goal is very simple. By the end of this course, you should understand not only what you have to do, but also how to approach the task, each task. So the key promise of this course is understand the format, learn flexible frameworks, and practice smarter. Underline the word flexible. Remember, because throughout this course, I will repeatedly tell you not to depend completely on memorized answers or fixed templates. You need a strategy that you can adapt to the actual quest. So let's begin with the basics. What is CELPIP? You know, CELPIP stands for Canadian English Language Proficiency Index Program. It is a computer delivered test. Computer delivered English proficiency test that evaluates listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And one important feature is that the test is designed around practical communication. That means you are not simply being tested on whether you know difficult vocabulary or complicated grammar. You are being tested on how effectively you can understand and communicate in situations. That can happen in everyday, social, academic, or the professional environments. For example, you need to understand a conversation. Then follow information, write an email, or give advice, describe situation, or express your opinion. See, it is accepted for Canadian immigration and also for if you're planning to migrate to Australia, you can just take this test. Okay, not only for Canada immigration, also for Australian migration. Remember one thing, always check the current language test score requirements for your specific immigration program before you proceed. Okay, that is one advice that I can provide you because before you book your test, always identify your exact requirement. Now, we'll just look at the CELPIP General at a glance. According to the CELPIP General, listening is approximately 46 to 55 minutes and reading is 43 to 56 minutes and writing is 53 minutes and speaking is 15 minutes. So this is not a short test. You need both English ability and also mental stamina. And all the 4 skills are completed in one single sitting, which means at a single stretch, you will complete all the 4 modules. So you should therefore practice in the conditions that are similar to the real test. I have seen students taking the listening test, practicing for 20 minutes, then going for some other work, then coming back. Don't do this. If you're taking a listening test, complete it. Because that will help you to learn to maintain a concentration. And you have noticed there are about unscored items. See, there are unscored items also here. Fine. So just stay focused on the task in front of you, because don't become stressed because you feel that the test is longer or slightly different from what you expected. Now let's look to the CELPIP score levels. CELPIP scores are reported separately for listening, reading, writing, and speaking. And you can see CELPIP 10 is CLB 10, Canadian Language Benchmarks. If it's CELPIP 9, it is CLB 9. And the maximum CELPIP level shown here is 12. Don't choose your target score randomly. Do not choose it, your target score randomly. You should first identify the requirement or your particular immigration profession and other application. See, one student may need a particular score in all 4 abilities, while other students' requirement may be different. So, your preparation should always begin with what score do I need? Once you know that, you can create a realistic preparation plan. Okay, now we'll look into the CELPIP listening overview in detail. The listening component has 6 parts. Part 1 is problem solving. Part 2 is daily life conversations. Part 3, listening for information. And part 4 is news items. Listening to news items and listening to discussion is part 5. And part 6 is listening for viewpoints. So the presentation shows a total of 38 scored questions, and the time is 46 to 55 minutes. And you can able to see how many questions are there in each items. See, in the early sections, you may need to identify a problem, understand the conversation, or locate information. Later, you need to understand the discussions and the viewpoints. And we should not use the same listening technique for every part. You have to listen for meaning, purpose, relationships, attitudes, opinions, then paraphrase, and not individual words. Now, listening to problem solving is the first question. What is listening to problem solving? The key structure that I've given is problem, options, suggestion, and decision. This is extremely useful because conversations often contain several possible solutions. And I have given an example here. Imagine 2 roommates discussing a noisy washing machine. One person may suggest calling the landlord, or the other person may initially say, maybe we can repair it ourselves. But later, after discussing the problem, they may decide that getting a professional inspection is safer. Now, what should you pay attention to? First, identify the real problem. Identify the real problem. Second, listen to the different opinions or the options. Then, third, listen carefully when someone objects, agrees, disagrees, or changes their mind. And finally, you have to identify the final decision. This is important because the first suggestion is not necessarily the final answer. A very common trap, choosing the option that was mentioned first. So ask yourself, what was the original preference? What was the final decision was made? Why did the speaker change the position? And always, please look for the meaning rather than waiting for exactly the same words to appear in the answer. No. Okay, understand the meaning. Now, so part 2, daily life conversations. And I want you to remember 4 simple questions here. Who? Identify the speakers and the relationship. Are they a customer and an employee? Friends, colleagues, a tenant, and a landlord. Second, where? Understand the setting. Where is this conversation happening? And why? Understand the purpose of the conversation. And the next comes is what? What actually happens? Or what decision is made? Now, I've given a simple example that you can able to see the screen. Yeah? Yeah. What is there? A customer calls a bakery because a family event has moved. earlier. So the customer needs to change a cake pickup time. The important information is not bakery or a cake. You need to understand the purpose of the call, the relationship between the speakers, and the reason for the request and the final arrangement. Also, separate small talk from important information. People may say polite expressions or casual comments, but those may not answer the question. And pay attention to tone and intention. Someone may be requesting, apologizing, refusing, persuading, or confirming something. The intention can be the key to the answer. Now, let's look to the part 3, listening for information. I want you to think in 4 stages: main idea, supporting detail, example, conclusion. When the recording begins, first understand the overall topic. Then identify the supporting information. Then you can notice the examples. Finally, listen to the conclusion or final message. For example, I've given the example here. A community gardener explains that compost improves soil, reduces household waste, and helps garden retain moisture. The main idea is composting. Then we have 3 supporting benefits: soil improvement, waste reduction, then what? Moisture retention. You don't need to write every sentence you hear. Instead, create a simple mental structure. For example, compost, soil plus waste plus moisture. And also listen for the signposting words such as first, next, however, because, consequently, as a result, furthermore. These words will help you understand the structure of the recording. This is about listening for information. Now, listening to news items. News reports are usually information heavy, so I recommend using the FIND framework. Again, who, what, where, why, when. You can also ask what changed. For example, you can able to see a city library announces extended weekend hours after a 6-month pilot showed increased student attendance. Now let's break that down. Who? It is about the city library. What? It announces extended weekend hours. Why? Because the pilot showed increased student attendance. What changed? The library's weekend schedule is being extended. So the important lesson is to identify the main development first. Do not get distracted by minor details. Here, do not become distracted by minor details, and also distinguish between the confirmed facts and predictions or comments. When you're taking notes, don't try to reproduce the entire news report. Write one short line of the main event and the only supporting details that will help you to understand. That's it. This is about listening to a news item. Next, listening to a discussion. Part 5 can be a little bit challenging because you have multiple speakers. And your biggest responsibility is to what? Keep track of who said what. You can mentally create 3 columns: speaker A, speaker B, and speaker C. Understand each person, track 2 things: position and reason or detail. The practice example is a hybrid work debate. So 3 colleagues debate whether the office could keep fully remote Fridays, introduce rotating in office teams, or return to the office every day week. The top here is one speaker may introduce an idea and another speaker may agree with it. If you only remember the idea, you might accidentally assign it to the wrong person. So always you have to connect speaker, position, reason. And also you have to listen for attitude changes also. Because a person may initially be skeptical, but later become supportive. That change can become the focus of a question. Clear? Next, part 6, listening for viewpoints. Part 6, this is where you move beyond basic factual listening. You need to identify opinion, reason, evidence, and attitude. Let's just use this street market debate or street market example. The commentator supports neighborhood street markets because they help small businesses while acknowledging concerns about traffic and noise. This is important. Just because someone mentions an opposing viewpoint does not mean they agree with it. For example, I might say some people believe working from home reduces productivity. Some people believe working from home reduces productivity. However, I believe flexible working can improve employee satisfaction. So the first idea is mentioned, but it is not my position. So always ask, what does the speaker actually want me to believe? And also pay attention to emotionally loaded language, emphasis, contrast, and tone. These can help you identify the speaker's real attitude. Okay, so that's about the part 6, listening for viewpoints. See, this is just an overview of all this, but let me break down in the upcoming videos. So I'll do some of part 1 questions. We can do some of the part 2, part 3. So we'll get an exact picture of what of this listening parts. Okay. Now, what is my strategy? I'll give you a complete listening strategy preview. Before the audio begins, read the question and options carefully. Identify what information you need. Preview. Before the audio begins, read the question and options carefully. Identify. See, preview is before the audio begins, read the question and options carefully. Identify what information you need. The second is predict. Think about the topic. Anticipate the topic. And predict the kind of information you may hear. Then listen. Focus on meaning, purpose, relationships, and structure. Then note. Write only useful keywords, contrast, decisions, and numbers. Then eliminate. Remove options that are unsupported or incomplete or irrelevant. And finally, choose the option that best supported by the completed message. This 6-step process prevents you from listening passively. You are listening with a purpose. Okay? And remember my main principle, do not listen for individual words. Instead, listen for meaning. Now, let's look at the listening traps. Very common listening traps. The first is same words wrongly. Because an answer may repeat the exact vocabulary you heard, but that does not automatically make it correct. The second trap is opinion changes. A speaker may consider one opinion and then change their mind. For example, I consider taking the bus, but the early train is more reliable, so I booked it. If the answer says the speaker will take the bus, that is wrong. The third trap is partial correctness. An option may be 80% correct but contain one incorrect detail. That makes the entire option unsuitable. The fourth is similar options. Two options may sound almost identical, but only one answers the precise question. And finally, irrelevant details. A detail can be true, but still not answer what you were asked. So remember the golden rule. Wait for the complete idea before deciding. So these are some of the common traps. Now, let's talk about note taking. The biggest mistakes that students do is wrong. They write each and everything what they hear in the audio. Your sentence should capture meaning, not the sentences. Okay, now use shorthand. For example, we use nowadays to type our messages, and nobody is typing in a full sentence. There's some shorthands or the symbols that you can use. You can use plus and minus symbols. So look at the example: pool closed Friday, repair, reopen Monday, members use e-center. These short notes are enough to reconstruct the meaning. The pool will close on Friday for repairs. Reopen Monday, and members may use the East Recreation Center during the closure. Your notes should help you remember what happened, why, what happens next. They should not become a transcript. The less you write, the more attention you can give to the audio. Now, let's move on to the listening common mistakes. Major listening mistakes, I could call it as major listening mistakes. Number one is trying to remember every single word. Number two, missing the tone or speaker intention. And number three, ignoring the paraphrased meanings. And number four, panicking because you missed one detail. And number five, choosing an answer simply because it repeats a word from the recording. Choosing an answer, the most common mistakes, that is the last one. They choose an answer because they have heard it in the recording. If you miss one detail, don't freeze. Use what I call the reset strategy. Take one deep breath, return your attention to the current idea, continue following the message. Don't allow one missed sentence to destroy the next 5 questions or next set of questions. See, please listen for meaning, not into rewards. Now, so that's about the listening. We are moving into the reading. Reading component has 4 major parts: reading correspondence, reading to apply a diagram, reading for information, and reading for viewpoints. And you have 38 scored questions, and the time is 43 to 56 minutes. The most important strategy is strategic reading. That means you don't necessarily read every word with the same level of attention. Instead, read with a purpose. Depending on the question, you may need to identify the main idea. Specific detail, relationship, evidence, the writer's tone, or a viewpoint. This is why good reading is not simply about reading fast. It is about knowing what you are looking for. Now let's look at all these questions in detail. The first is reading correspondence. This may involve an email or another practical communication. This may involve an email or some other practical communication. There are 3 important points that are going to identify purpose. Identify the purpose and main idea. Scan for the specific details and tone or relationship. So look at the example. The writer thanks Daniel for offering to lead a Saturday volunteer orientation. Then the writer asks Daniel to arrive at 8:30 so they can test the project. The writer also mentions 12 new volunteers and accessibility support. Finally, Daniel is asked to send the final handout by Thursday. Do not simply read the email and move on. Ask yourself, why was this message written? What response does the writer expect? And what exactly must Daniel do? So what is the relationship between the 2 people? The tone here is professional but cooperative. Understanding the relationship will help you to interpret the language correctly. This is about the reading correspondence. Now, reading to apply a diagram. So part 2 requires you to combine written information with a diagram or visual. The most important strategy is read the question first. Then identify the requirements. For example, perhaps you need a technology session suitable for beginners, beginning after 10:30. Now you can schedule. Now you can scan the schedule. You see beginner coding from 9:30 to 10:30. It may match technology and beginner, but fails the time required. That is what you can see from here. The correct option is smartphone basics at 11. This teaches a very important lesson. The correct answer must satisfy all conditions. Okay, must satisfy all conditions. Don't select an answer because it matches two keywords. Check every requirement. Think of it like a checklist. Subject, time, level, location. All conditions must match. This is about community skills test getting and the time slot, the session, and the location. Okay. Reading to apply a diagram. Read the question, identify the requirement, scan the visual, and match the information. Now, reading for information. Here is a process I recommend. Skim, locate, read, verify. First, skim the passage to understand the overall topic. Then locate keywords or likely paraphrases. Then read. Carefully read the relevant section. Finally, verify that the answer is directly supported by the text. The examples I have given an article. The urban sustainability and community gardens on unused concrete rooftops. If the question asks why cities are converting rooftops into gardens, you don't need to read each and every sentence or each and every word. You need to locate the relevant information and just verify it. See, remember one thing, search for evidence and meaning, not a sentence that looks exactly like the answer. That is a golden tip. Search for evidence and meaning, not for a sentence that looks identical to the option. A very important tip. Please note it down. Now, part 4, reading for viewpoints. Part 4 focuses on viewpoints, and here you should understand who thinks what and why. And 3 different perspectives. A resident supports a car-free downtown because of clean air. A shop owner worries about the delivery logistics and access. A transit advocate supports the idea that only if bus frequency improves. Notice how each viewpoint has 3 elements: person, position, reason. One of the biggest mistakes is confusing a viewpoint described by the writer with the writer's own viewpoint. For example, if the writer says, some residents argue that, that does not mean the writer agrees with those residents. Always identify who owns the option. Always identify who owns the opinion. So this is a very common mistake, confusing a viewpoint described by the writer with the writer's own viewpoint. Identify who owns the opinion. And we're going to discuss skimming versus scanning. Students often they confuse skimming and scanning. They are different skills. Skimming means reading quickly to understand the big picture. Main title and headings, opening and closing sentences, general paragraph topics, overall message. You look at this. And scanning means searching for specific information. You look for names, dates, numbers, keywords, or exact facts. For example, imagine an event. You just imagine an event notice. Okay? If I skim it, I want to know what is this event about. Then what is the registration deadline? If I scan, I may want to know what is the registration deadline. See, strong readers, they constantly switch between skimming and scan. Strong readers constantly they switch between the skimming and scan. So don't use only one technique throughout the entire reading component. Okay? Now, paraphrase trap. This is one of the most important reading concepts. CELPIP test meaning not simple word matching. And look at this example. What the passage says. The company postponed the product launch, and the answer may say, the release was delayed. See, the vocabulary is different, but the meaning is the same. And CELPIP test meaning not simple matching. See, second example. Residents objected to the proposal. And the option. Local people opposed the plan. Again, the words are different, but the relationship between the ideas remains the same. So when you read an option, don't ask, did I see these exact words? Or instead you ask, does this option agree with the same meaning? This is a golden rule. Always check whether the relationship between ideas remains the same, even if the vocabulary changes completely. Okay, now we'll get into the reading time management. Now let's talk about the time. The biggest danger in reading is becoming trapped by one difficult question, and you might spend much of your time for only one question and you will rush it for the next few questions. Because don't do that. Instead, use the cycle. Question, locate, verify, answer, move. Read the question. Locate the relevant information. Verify it in the passage. Choose the best supported answer, then move forward. And you can return to a difficult question if time permits. But don't sacrifice several questions for one difficult question. Always remember, there is no need to create your own rigid, unofficial time rule for every question. The important thing is to maintain momentum and protect enough time to engage with the reading component. Okay, see, consistency is better than perfection on a single task. Now let's look at the reading common mistakes. The most common mistakes, reading every word slowly from the beginning. Then matching the identical words without checking meaning. Using outside knowledge instead of evidence from the passage. Fourth is missing negative or exception-based meanings. Fifth, ignoring the context around the keyword. And the sixth is spending too much time on one difficult question. So here is your golden tool. Find explicit evidence before choosing your answer. Don't answer based on what you personally believe. Don't answer based on general world knowledge. Don't answer based on general world knowledge. Answer based on what the passage supports. That's it. Okay, now we'll just move on to the CELPIP writing overview. The presentation actually shows the official time of 53 minutes. And there are two tasks, task 1 and task 2. Task 1 is writing an email. Task 2 is survey response. And task 1 requires 150-200 words according to the presentation. Task 1 requires you to respond appropriately to a situation through an email. And task 2 requires you to choose a position and support it with reasons and details for that choice. For both tasks, I recommend a simple cycle: plan, write, review. Don't immediately start writing the moment you see the question. I've seen many students just they look at the question, they'll say there's no, they'll not spend time for planning itself. Spend short amount of time understanding exactly what the prompt requires. Then write. And finally, reserve the time to review spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, punctuation errors. Okay? How writing is evaluated. Very important question. What makes a good CELPIP writing response? Coherent and content. Content and task fulfillment is the first one. Did you answer everything the prompt asked you to answer? Second is vocabulary. Are your words precise, varied, and appropriate? Third, readability. Can the examiner understands your ideas easily? And fourth is coherence. Are your ideas logically organized? And you also need appropriate grammar, sentence structure, spelling, punctuation, paragraphing, and connectors. A memorized template cannot guarantee high score. Your response must actually fit the prompt. And good writing is very good. You heard it. Clear ideas, development, appropriate language, and complete task. This is about the good writing. So these are the skills being tested. Task fulfillment, content, coherence, readability. Now, task 1, writing an email. Before writing an email, ask yourself 4 questions. Who am I writing to? Why am I writing? What must I include and what tone should I use? The tone could be formal, neutral, or appreciative. For example, if you're complaining to a company, you may need to be firm but professional. If you're writing to a friend, the tone can be much more relaxed. One excellent strategy is to convert every requirement in the prompt into a short planning note. If the prompt has 3 bullet points, make sure your plan has 3 corresponding points. This prevents you from accidentally answering only 2 parts of the question. Grammatically excellent email can still be weak if the topic or if it doesn't complete the task. You have written or you have just given only the 2 points. You have answered only the 2 bullet points and your answer is grammatically correct, no spelling mistakes, no grammar, and everything is good, but you will not able to get your high score because you have missed 1 point there. Okay, see, you can decide on the appropriate tone. A well-written email can still lose effectiveness if it misses 1 repeat point. So check your plan against the prompt. Now you may ask me how to write a flexible email structure. Start with the greeting, then give a purpose or opening. In the body, use the development pattern. Point, detail, outcome. This is extremely useful. Don't simply say the workshop was late. Instead, the workshop started late. That's a point. Then several sessions began more than 20 minutes behind schedule. See, that's actually the detail. So point is here. What is your point? The workshop started late. Several sessions began more than 20 minutes behind schedule. That's a detail. Then, as a result, the final session had to be shortened. And that's the outcome. This makes you writing more developed. You can use 2 body paragraphs or 3 if necessary. And finally finish with the suitable closing and sign off. But remember one thing. This is a flexible framework, not strict to memorize word for word. Adapt to the actual situation. Okay, adapt to the prompt. Now, task 1, a practice example. Let's look at the practice situation. You attended a professional training workshop, but you were dissatisfied with some aspects. You need to write to the organizer. There are 3 main requirements. First, explain why you attended. Second, describe 2 specific problems. Third, suggest how the events could be improved. The important challenge here is tone. You need to communicate dissatisfaction, but you should remain professional also. Don't write aggressively. Instead of the workshop was terrible and completely useless. You could say, unfortunately, several aspects of the workshop did not meet my expectations. You can then explain the specific problem and its impact. See, CELPIP Task 1 requires you to address all prompts while maintaining a consistent, appropriate tone throughout the email. So, what tone is firm enough to communicate dissatisfaction, but professional enough to encourage positive action from the organizer? The goal is to be firm, specific, and constructive. For this, I want you to plan before you write. The point one is reason for attending. For example, the candidate intended to learn practical project management skills for a new role. And point two is problem, lateness. Several sessions began late, which shortened the final workshop. And the problem is level gap. The materials were too basic for an intermediate level participant. And then you can provide a solution. Start sessions on time and separate beginner or intermediate groups. The plan is simple, but it prevents repetition. It also ensures that every requirement is covered. You don't need to write full sentences during planning, just create short notes. For example, new role, late sessions, basic material, separate levels. Then you can expand your notes into proper paragraph. Okay, this is what you do before you start writing. Plan before you write. Then strong email language. For an opening, you can write and writing regard when explaining an issue. Or one issue I encountered was when adding consequences, this was particularly inconvenient because when making a request, I would appreciate it. And for closing, thank you for considering my concerns. But please don't memorize these expressions and force them into every email. Clear? Okay, use them naturally. Instead of saying it was bad, be specific. What was bad, why it was a problem, and what consequence it had. See, specific language is always stronger than vague language. Okay? So, let's analyze this sample. The opening immediately tells the reader why the writer is contacting the organizer. The writer explains that the intermediate sessions appear relevant to a new supervisory role. Then the writer introduces a specific problem. 2 sessions started more than 20 minutes late. Notice the precision. It doesn't simply say the sessions were late. It says more than 20 minutes late. That concrete detail makes the complaint much stronger. The writer then explains the consequence. The final workshop was shortened. This is exactly what I want you to cover. Problem, specific detail, consequence. That pattern will help you to develop your ideas naturally. See, clear purpose, professional tone, and specific details. Now, task 2. Here, you're presented with 2 options. Your job is to choose one and defend it. Responding to survey questions. And my first recommendation is don't spend too long trying to find your personal favorite. Choose the option that is easier to defend with 2 strong reasons. Then establish your reasoning clearly. You can discuss community benefits, organizational benefits, practical advantages, long-term impact, or other relevant considerations. You should also briefly acknowledge the alternative. For example, although option B offers some advantages, I believe option A would be more beneficial because then you explain your reasons. Use logical connectors such as furthermore, consequently, therefore, in addition, however. And remember, two well-developed reasons are much better than five undeveloped ideas. Okay? Next, I recommend four main sections: introduction, reason one, reason two, then conclusion. In introduction, you can just acknowledge the survey topic. Clearly state your preferred option. For reason one, you can give your main benefit and explain why it matters and provide an example. Reason two, give a completely different benefit and develop it. Finally, you can just conclude by reinforcing your position. Your reasons should be distinct. Don't say option A is good because it is beneficial. And then option A is good because it is useful. Those are basically the same idea. Instead, choose two separate dimensions. For example, reason one could be community health, reason two could be accessibility. That creates stronger development. Okay. So, tasks to practice example. Let's apply the strategy. The city council is deciding between option A, new public park, and option B, library extension. The park includes green space, sports facilities, playground, and walking trails. The library extension includes increased capacity, then digital learning facilities, study zones, and meeting rooms. Remember, there is no single correct personal opinion here. Your job is to choose one option and develop a convincing argument. For example, if I choose a bar, I could discuss first public health and physical activity. Second, community accessibility and social interaction. If I choose a library, I might discuss first educational opportunities. Second, digital access and community learning. The important thing is not which option you personally like. The important thing is which option you can defend more effectively. Okay? Now, sorry. Oh my God. 1 second. Right. Actually, the slide was about, I think, time, how to manage your time. So I'll just explain the slide. So you have limited preparation time, right? And so you need to make decisions quickly. So first thing I want to do is choose option A or B immediately. Don't spend 40 seconds thinking. I think that was the slide I was, yeah, which one do I really prefer? Which options give me two clear reasons? Then avoid the middle ground positions. If the task asks you to choose between two options, clearly choose one. After that, organize your ideas. So 0 to 15 seconds, choose your option and identify your main benefit. And 15 to 35 seconds, develop your first reason. And 35 to 55 seconds, develop your second reason. And use the final few seconds to make sure your two reasons do not overlap. This is a practical way to use preparation time. Now let's move on to the upgrade your writing. A basic response might say the training was bad, many people were late, I want a refund. The training was bad, many people were late, I want a refund. The problem is that this is vague and repetitive. And a stronger response. The workshop was highly disorganized as several sessions commenced significantly later than scheduled. Consequently, I would appreciate a partial reimbursement. Notice the difference. We have more precise vocabulary. Instead of bad, we say highly disorganized. Instead of started late, we can use commenced significantly later than scheduled. And instead of simply stating what happened, we show the consequences using consequently. But remember, don't make your writing complicated for just for the sake of sounding advanced. Your goal is precision, clarity, natural language. Okay. What are the common mistakes? Weak development, which means students give an idea but they don't explain it. Second is repetitive vocabulary. Good, bad, nice. Third is failing to review your answer. Very important thing. They finish writing and they immediately submit. Fourth, they use using slang in a formal email. Wanna, gonna. Okay. Uh, and one more thing is copying the prompt instead of expressing the idea naturally. And if you ask me, poor time management with word count. Too little writing may not provide enough development, while excessive writing may or can cause you to lose focus and review time. Okay, I want you to save at least 2 to 3 minutes for review when possible. And don't look only for the spelling mistakes. Read your response silently as if you were the examiner. Does this sound natural? Did I answer every point? And is my tone appropriate? Now, let's move on to the CELPIP speaking 8 tasks. Okay, CELPIP 8 tasks. First is giving advice. 2, talking about a personal experience. 3, describing a scene. And 4 is making predictions. And 5 is comparing and persuading. And 6 is dealing with a difficult situation. And 7 is expressing opinions. And 8 is describing an unusual situation. Notice that these tasks are different. So you cannot use exactly the same response for every task. However, there is one common skill behind almost all of them. Develop your ideas clearly. Don't give one short sentence and stop. Your response need content, organization, vocabulary, appropriate vocabulary, and natural delivery. Now let's look at how the speaking is evaluated. The first is content, task fulfillment, vocabulary, listenability, and coherence. Content is that do you have enough relevant ideas? Did you answer what the question actually asked? Can the listener understand you easily? Are your ideas logically connected? See, grammar matters, but communication is more than grammar. You also need sentence structure variety, rhythm, intonation, transitions, and appropriate tone. A student can have excellent vocabulary but still produce a weak response if the ideas are poorly organized. So don't chase difficult words. Instead, focus on the clear ideas, development, natural delivery. Let's look at the task 1. Task 1 is giving advice. Start with the greeting and direct advice. Hi, I heard you're looking for some advice. I would suggest that. Then explain your reason. For example, one reason is that a great idea. The great idea is because then provide a secondary suggestion. Finally, finish with encouragement. For example, I'm sure you will do great. Good luck with your decision. You have preparation time, so don't waste it trying to write a complete answer. Use the time to identify 2 solid reasons. And remember your tone. You're giving advice, so you should sound supportive and helpful. Don't sound like a robot reading an essay. Speak naturally. Talking about the task 2. Task 2 is personal experience. A simple structure is setting, core action, result, and reflection. First, introduce the situation. Who was involved? When did it happen? Where were you? Then explain what happened. Use chronological language such as first, next, suddenly, after that, eventually. Finally, discuss the result. How did the situation end? How did you feel? What did you learn? You can also use sensory details. What did you see? What did you hear? What was the atmosphere like? The formula here is idea, reason, detail, example, result. Don't turn the answer into a list. Tell it like a short, organized story. Task 3 is describing a scene. The biggest mistake is jumping randomly from one object to another. Instead, use a spatial organization system. You can move background, left, center, right, foreground. First, give a general description. Then describe the people. How many people are there? What are they wearing? What are they doing? Use the present continuous. Is walking, are talking, is holding, are playing. Then describe important objects. Use prepositions such as next to, behind, in front of, beside, near, on the left, in the center. Your goal is to guide the listener's eyes through the picture. Imagine that the listener cannot see the image. Your job is to create a clear mental picture. Let's move on to the task 4. Task 4 is making predictions. This is different from simply describing the image. I have given 4 stages: observe, interpret, predict, and extend. First, observe visible evidence. Okay. Second, explain what evidence suggests. Third, make a prediction. And finally, add another likely consequence if possible. For example, imagine a busy outdoor market. Dark clouds are gathering. Vendors are covering their stalls. Shoppers are looking upward. The prediction is rain is likely to begin soon and the market may close early. Notice the difference. The clouds are dark is a description. It is likely to rain soon is a prediction. Use words such as might, could, likely, appears to be, seems likely to. Avoid presenting your prediction as an absolute fact. Okay, now the 5th task, comparing and persuading. This task requires 2 skills. The framework is state, compare, support, acknowledge, close. First, clearly state your preferred option. Then compare both options. Next, give reasons and details supporting your recommendation. Briefly acknowledge the alternative. Finally, close confidently. The example on the slide involves 2 job offers. Option A is a higher paying corporate job with long hours. Option B is a lower paying startup job with flexible hours and growth potential. You might choose either one. But if you choose option A, don't simply say, I prefer option A. Explain why. Maybe the higher salary provides greater financial stability. Then acknowledge the advantage of option B, such as flexibility. Finally, reinforce your recommendation. Remember, state, compare, support, acknowledge, close. And task 6 is dealing with a difficult situation. This is where tone becomes extremely important because I've given 4 steps here. Acknowledge. Show that you understand the situation. For example, I understand this is short notice. Step 2. State your decision. Be clear. Unfortunately, I won't be able to. Step 3. Provide a reason. This is because I have a prior commitment. Step 4. Propose a solution. However, I can help you tomorrow instead. This creates a very professional response. You are not simply saying no. You're showing empathy, clarity, reason, solution. Don't become overly apologetic and don't sound aggressive. Your goal is to handle the situation politely while still making your position clear. Now, let's move on to the task 7. You can use this development structure, position, reason 1, the example, then reason 2, close. See, let's look at the example. The question asks whether cities should invest more in public parks rather than shopping centers. The speaker clearly says, or it states, I strongly believe cities should prioritize public parks. Then comes a recent one. Parks provide accessible spaces for residents. Then an example. For instance, a riverside can become a community meeting point. Community meeting point. Then reason two, green spaces can contribute to better mental health. Finally, the speaker reinforces the position. This is exactly what I want you to do. Don't simply say, I agree because parks are good. Give your opinion, explain, develop the idea, provide an example, then give another distinct reason, then close. Okay, I've given some key language phrases also here. You can just take note of it. Now, task 8 is unusual situation. Unusual situation. It is describing an unusual situation. Here, precision is extremely important because the listener may not be able to see the image. Identify and general impression. Detailed breakdown. Specific audit days. And concluding summary. First, tell the listener what kind of object or situation you are looking at. Then describe it systematically. You can use spatial language at the top, underneath, on the side, attached to, protruding from. And you can also make comparisons. For example, it looks like a giant spiral, or it is shaped like a teardrop. Use sensory adjectives for color, texture, and material. Finally, explain what makes the object unusual. Okay? The important point is you are describing the image to someone who cannot see it. Therefore, don't assume the listener can understand what you mean. Okay, this is about the task page. Now, I want to give you one formula that helps across many speaking tasks. It is idea. First, state your idea, then explain why. Third, add detail. Fourth, provide an example. And finally, explain the result or impact. For example, I think public transportation should be improved. The main reason is that reliable public transportation can reduce traffic congestion. For example, if buses operate more frequently during peak hours, commuters may leave their cars at their home. As a result, roads could become less congested and commuting could become more efficient. See how one simple idea becomes a developed response. You don't need 10 ideas. You need a few good ideas that you can develop. Just a few good ideas, which that you can develop your answer. And now let's talk about the natural speaking. First, use transitions for adding information. Furthermore, in addition, moreover, and for contrast. However, nevertheless, on the other hand, examples, for instance, to illustrate specifically, and for conclusions, consequently, therefore, as a result. But natural speaking is not only about vocabulary, you also need thought groups. Don't speak every word separately like a robot. For example, I believe public transportation should be improved because it can reduce congestion and make commuting more efficient. See, pay attention to the sentence stress. Stress important content words. Use natural intonation and use pauses. A short pause is much better than repeatedly saying uh, no. If you need thinking time, then use a clean pause or natural transition. For that, you have to record yourself, record your speaking, and listen to it. So you might be thinking, what are the speaking common mistakes? Now let's look at the 4 speaking mistakes. Long silences and data, pausing for more than 3 to 5 minutes to think. If you stop for several seconds repeatedly, the response loses flow. Repetitive vocabulary. Repetitive vocabulary using good, bad, again, the limits the quality of your language. And third is ignoring the task details. If the prompt has 3 requirements and if you answer only one, your response is incomplete. Fourth, scripted and monotone delivery, sounding like you're reading a memorized script, cough intonation, or emphasis on keywords. Focus on natural rhythm and varied vocal pitch. See what you should do. Use flexible language. Use natural transitions. Vary your sentence structure. And most importantly, if you make a mistake, don't stop. Correct yourself if necessary. And continue. Because consistency is better than perfection. Now, let's look at, let's compare 2 responses. The basic response is, I liked the professional workshop. It was very good and I learned many things. The teacher was nice. I think I'll go again next year because it was helpful. The problem is not the grammar is terrible. The problem is limited development and repetitive vocabulary. Now look at the stronger response. I found the professional workshop. Okay. What is written? Yes. Professional workshop. Exceptionally insightful. Okay. Exceptionally. See, precise vocabulary. Exceptionally insightful. Then practical strategies that I can immediately apply to the new role. Furthermore, the facilitators' expertise ensured that complex concepts were highly accessible. And look at the word complex concepts. Refine my skills. It also uses stronger transitions. But remember, the lesson is not the biggest words possible. The lesson is not use the biggest words possible. The lesson is be precise. Use vocabulary that communicates exactly what you mean and develop the idea. Instead of saying it was good, what you can say? Why it was good? Why it was good? Why was it useful? What did you learn and how will you use it? This what makes a response stronger. You can just look at those 2 responses, the basic response and the stronger response. Look at the words. Practical strategies, highly accessible, refine my skills. Fix these before test. For listening, avoid word for word matching, ignoring paraphrases, and missing tone or changes in opinion. For reading, using outside knowledge and only using the scanning method, not skimming method. Then spending too much time on one question. Writing, avoid weak development, template dependency, and vocabulary repetition. Speaking pitfalls, long silences, and neglecting the task, the requirement, and lack of jumping the ideas jumping between the ideas without transitions. Okay, I want you to treat this slide as a personal diagnostic checklist. Ask yourself, which of these mistakes do I make most often? Which of this? Is it listening, reading, writing, or speaking? Don't simply practice more. Practice a specific week. You can just create a table, identify your strong areas, identify your weak areas, and improve on it. And if you find the problem is with speaking the fluency, record yourself, If your problem is reading time, practice timed passages. And if your problem is writing development, practice expanding one idea using recent detail, example, and a result. Now, we'll discuss about the test day identification arrival, break the valid original identification that used for registration. Okay, because photocopies, digital copies are not accepted. Make sure the name on your identification matches your registration details. Next, arrive at the test center according to the instructions provided in information. Don't arrive at the last possible minute. Reach an exam hall before 15 minutes or half an hour before so that you will feel comfortable, relaxed. Okay? Because you need enough time for check-in and for verification and security procedures. Carry your original valid passport, and when you arrive, follow the instructions given by the test center staff. The goal is to arrive earlier, okay, reach your exam hall half an hour before, be calm, prepared rather than rushing into the test under unnecessary stress. Don't create stress, reach your exam hall earlier, calm, and get prepared. Security and conduct, yes. Personal belongings must be stored according to the center's instructions. Items such as mobile phone, watches, or whatever you carry, the unauthorized materials. Unauthorized materials are not permitted at the test. Okay, you should follow every instruction carefully. Don't communicate with the other candidates during the test or before the test. Okay? See, test center rules are part of the test day process. Your responsibility is to arrive, prepare, follow instructions, and focus on your examination. So, in the beginning, I just told you that I'll be giving the final preparation checklist, right? For listening, remember, review, predict, listen, note, eliminate, answer. Focus on meaning, not just words. For reading rule, skim, locate, read, verify. Always look for evidence. For writing, use plan, write, review. Make sure every prompt requirement is addressed and your ideas are properly developed. For speaking, you can use the development chain. Idea, reason, detail, example, result. On a test day, take your valid original passport or the valid original identification and follow all center instructions. There are two golden principles on this slide. Meaning is more important than simply matching words. Second, flexibility is more important than memorized scripts. This is one of the biggest messages. One of the biggest messages I want you to take away from this entire course. Okay. So, and finally, we have reached the end of our CELPIP full course 2026. I hope this session has given you a clear understanding of the CELPIP test and more importantly, a practical strategy for approaching each skill. Remember, success in CELPIP is not about memorizing hundreds of sentences. It's about understanding the task, developing your ideas, managing your time, and communicating clearly and naturally. So, yes, with the right strategies, structured practice, and expert guidance, you can just start preparing. And if you're planning to take CELPIP and you want structured preparation, personalized guidance, and practice, you can get in touch with GEMS Abroad using the contact details which is shown here. And most importantly, don't wait until the final week before your test to start serious preparation. Identify your target score, understand your weakness, practice consistently, analyze your mistakes, and keep improving one skill at a time. Thank you so much for joining me in this CELPIP masterclass. I wish you the very best for your CELPIP test. Stay consistent and stay confident. And remember, strategy, practice, consistency can make a major difference. All the very best, and I'll see you in the next lesson. So that's it. Bye.